that was funny because she's the only one with BMW in our neighborhood. I said, oh, I thought that was a Prius. Because it was that blue color that all the Priuses are.
We normally talk a lot about the council and the mission of the council. I would much prefer we get to hear from our speakers tonight. So in your programs is the history of the council and our mission, and we welcome all of you. I'd like to acknowledge the council and conference committee, the speakers, Lifespan, who continuously helps fund our mission, for which we're very grateful, and all of our attendees. Tonight's topic, women in the workplace as a women's health issue. I think we talk a lot about gender issues in the workplace among ourselves. I'm not sure we are spending enough time recognizing the degree to which this is an issue for women's health. And we wanted to bring that to the forefront to you tonight. Shelley Cornell, who's a PhD psychologist at one of the gender institutes in California, talks about stereotypes, and I think her framework for tonight would be very helpful. She talks about stereotypes are used as cognitive shortcuts to process information. So the easiest way to get to a fast answer is to stereotype. And it leads to bias, which really bias is just errors in decision making. Because we're operating on an assumption, we make errors. And then we end up shifting criteria to justify choices. And a great example of this is a study that was done looking at applicants, supposed applicants to a police commissioner job, so a traditionally male job, and looking at completely comparable resumes, except for one there was more education and one there was more experience. And when you put just male names on those CVs, everyone chose the person with the most education, saying that education was more important. When you flipped it and you made a woman, you made the person with the most education a woman's name, and kept the experienced person a male, suddenly it was experience that was more important. And that's an example of how we shift criteria to justify our choices, and we see it all of the time. I think we are often judged by harsher standards, and most of all, there's often backlash that makes it unlikely that women are able to be successful and likable. And so when we think about women's place in work and in life, and why it becomes a women's health issue, it's pretty obvious. It's very difficult to feel happy or content and be continuously under scrutiny and disliked. So we're not nuts, we're responding to our environment. And I hope the wonderful women who are here to talk to you tonight will help us with that. We, as a Women's Health Council, with Colin and Lisa's help, sent out a survey in preparation for this conference to see what you saw as challenges. And so the first question was, what if any challenges do you face as women in the workplace? And we had 263 respondents. And we asked about overt harassment, being passed over for opportunities, work expectations conflicting with outside, pay disparity, common suggestions or contributions discounted, or just like your voice is not heard in the room, unhealthy competition from other women. And most of these are comparable whether people were senior management, at every level and in every paid scale. The only difference that was repeatedly seen is kind of interesting, and that is that senior managers were less likely than the rest of the workforce and the lower end of pay scale to feel as stressed by conflict with outside, work expectations conflicting with outside, and I don't think it's that surprising. Women at higher pay scales and women in higher positions have more flexibility, they have more resources for outside support, and so I'm not at all sure that it's that surprising. We found the same problems for our patients that we did for ourselves, although I think we paid closer attention to them in our patients. When we asked about strategies and challenges that women often face in the workplace, what were strategies that helped? The highest response about that were flexible schedules. So flexibility is a huge, huge, huge issue. for women. And I think it's sad that acting civil is even a question. But civility was one of the responses that would help. And everyone having a voice. And as you can see, not very many, there's not been very many changes. So from 7% to 16%, so our second highest is at 16% of respondents noted that something different had happened in their workplace to help with these issues. So we've got a lot of work to do, a very lot of work to do. The entire survey and its results are on the website, so you can see them. So did you see any health impacts of workplace stress on your patients or clients? 82% of respondents said they did, and yet 63% of respondents said that there was workplace stress in general. So we see it better in our patients than we see it in ourselves, and I can't emphasize that enough, that for women we always see it more in others than we do in ourselves and are more willing to do something about it for others. And maybe that's an area that we can help each other. And the primary areas of workplace, patients and clients, they're the same. Patients and clients and our own areas of stress are often the same. And when we talk about changes that were made to improve the work environment, again, we see lots about flexibility, some about pay disparity, a lot about recognizing value. And so much of what we do is about people feeling valued. And what happens when you feel undervalued and what happens when you feel ignored. We hope that everyone here will find their voice. We had all kinds of responses from all kinds of providers, all types of organizations were represented. And lastly, the salary range of the responses was very wide. It was from below $20,000 a year to greater than $100,000 a year. And again, issues are very similar across all pay grades, except for work expectations and conflict with the outside, and probably pay disparities. The biggest group that found that they were passed over for opportunities, however, was in the highest pay grade. I think that's pretty important information. So I would really like to turn the conference over to our speakers.